The celebratory smoke had barely cleared from the Jerez grandstands when a heavy, unexpected silence descended upon the Prima Pramac Yamaha garage, as the most hyped rider in a decade rolled into pit lane in a position nobody thought possible. For months, the narrative surrounding Toprak Razgatlioglu had been one of inevitable dominance, a transition from WorldSBK to the premier class that felt more like a coronation than a challenge. Coming off the back of a sensational preseason and a series of save-of-the-year moments during the Friday practice sessions in Spain, the Ottoman King looked like he had finally solved the riddle of the Yamaha V4. The atmosphere at the Circuito de Jerez was electric. Fans had traveled from across Europe and Turkey to witness what many experts predicted would be a maiden MotoGP podium. But as the checkered flag waved on Sunday, the timing screens showed a staggering reality, P13. This wasn't just a poor finish, it was a systemic shock to the paddock. Insiders began to whisper about the sudden disappearance of the pace that had made Toprak look invincible just 48 hours prior. Behind the closed doors of the Yamaha hospitality unit, the faces of the engineers told a story of deep concern. They weren't just looking at a lost race, they were looking at a fundamental shift in the momentum of the 2026 season. The air of invincibility that usually follows the Turkish rider had evaporated, replaced by the cold, hard data of a Sunday afternoon that went catastrophically wrong. Reporters noted that even the usually stoic Lynn Jarvis appeared perplexed by the sudden drop-off in performance, marking this as the first major crisis point for the Blue Revolution project. But behind the high-tech garage doors, things were far from normal, as the revolutionary Yamaha V4 engine project faced its most grueling technical trial since its secretive debut earlier this year. The transition from the traditional inline-4 to the V4 configuration was supposed to be the weapon that finally allowed Yamaha to hunt down the Ducatis on the long straights of the European circuit. However, Jerez revealed a hidden complication in how this power is delivered during high-intensity race conditions. Technical analysts observed that Toprak was struggling immensely with the bike's sophisticated engine braking maps, a crucial component for his aggressive, late-braking style. In WorldSBK, Razgatlioglu is famous for stabbing the brakes, often lifting the rear wheel in a display of physics-defying control. In the premier class, however, the Michelin tires and the Yamaha's electronics are far more sensitive to these vertical movements. According to paddock insiders, the bike's EMU inertial measurement unit began to struggle with Toprak's signature style, leading to inconsistent weight transfer. This wasn't just a matter of rider preference. It was a fundamental clash between a generational talent and a machine designed for precision over raw aggression. Reports suggested that during the mid-race phase, the electronic strategy, specifically Map 3, was failing to provide the necessary support into the apex of Turn 6. This technical friction created a cascading effect, forcing Toprak to ride around the bike's limitations rather than with them. The result was a mounting frustration that began to boil over during the technical debriefs. As the team realized that the V4's power was useless if the rider couldn't stop it with the confidence he had built his career upon. What seemed like a simple racing incident soon became something much bigger, as a high-speed confrontation during the Saturday sprint sent shockwaves through the FIM steward's office. The roots of the Sunday P13 finish can be traced directly back to an intense disagreement on the asphalt during the previous day's action. While battling for a top 5 position, Toprak found himself in a heated exchange of track position with Aprilia's Lorenzo Savadori. The two riders, both desperate to prove the worth of their respective projects, made contact at the entry of the notorious Turn 5. While both stayed upright, the incident was immediately flagged for investigation. Paddock whispers grew loud as the FIM steward spent hours reviewing the footage, eventually concluding that the maneuver was overly ambitious under the current safety guidelines. The verdict was a crushing long-lap penalty to be served during the main Sunday race. This decision didn't just cost Toprak time, it cost him his psychological rhythm. In the high-stakes environment of the 2026 season, where the gap between P1 and P15 is often less than a second per lap, a long lap penalty is effectively a competitive setback from which few can recover. The tension between the Aprilia and Yamaha camps was palpable on Sunday morning, with speculation emerging that the penalty was a message from the authorities to the newcomer regarding the limits of aggressive racing. For Toprak, it meant starting the race with a mountain to climb, knowing that his signature comeback ability would be tested like never before. The weight of this expectation, combined with the lingering heat from the confrontation, set the stage for a Sunday that would test the very limits of his resolve. And that's when the paddock realized something was very wrong, as the visual of Toprak navigating the penalty loop revealed a technical flaw that left him defenseless against the mid-pack. When the signal was given for Toprak to serve his long lap penalty on lap 4, the camera caught a glimpse of a rider struggling for more than just lost time. As he entered the painted loop on the outside of the track, The Yamaha V4 appeared to hiccup on the downshift, a technical glitch that some believe was triggered by the sudden change in lean angle and throttle position required by the penalty lane. By the time he rejoined the main track, he hadn't just lost the 3 seconds dictated by the penalty. He had lost his tire temperature and, more importantly, his place in the slipstream train. In modern MotoGP, being stuck in the wake of 4 or 5 other bikes causes the front tire pressure to skyrocket, making the bike nearly impossible to turn. Observations from the pit lane suggested that Toprak's front Michelin had exceeded its thermal window within just 2 laps of rejoining the field. He was stuck in a no-man's land, unable to use his superior braking to overtake because the heat from the bikes ahead had softened his front-end support. It was a tactical nightmare. The rider who usually dictates the pace was now a passenger to the aerodynamic turbulence of the mid-pack. Insiders claimed that the team's strategy for such a scenario was non-existent, as they had never planned for their star rider to be mired so deep in the field. The sight of the 54 bike being picked off by satellite riders on the straights was a staggering visual for a fanbase that had grown used to seeing him at the front of every battle. But behind the helmet, a hidden physical strain was beginning to take its toll, suggesting that the spectacular practice moments had come at a heavy cost. Throughout the weekend, the media had been replaying Toprak's save of the year, a moment where he lost the front at over 150 kilometers per hour and somehow used his knee and elbow to prop the bike back up. While it looked heroic on the highlights reel, some insiders began to report that the incident had left Toprak with a significant bruise and a possible strain in his right shoulder. As the Sunday race progressed into its final 10 laps, his posture on the bike began to change. He was no longer attacking the corners, he was bracing for them. The physical demand of wrestling a 280 horsepower V4 machine around the tight, twisty layout of Jerez is immense, and for a rider not at 100% capacity, it becomes a dangerous game of endurance. Data analysts noted that his lap times began to drop off significantly in the 4th sector, where the heavy braking for the final hairpin requires maximum upper body strength. Reports from the medical center post-race suggested that the setback was more severe than the team had publicly admitted. This raised a difficult question. Did the team's desire for a viral marketing moment during practice lead to a compromised Sunday performance? The human element of the sport is often overshadowed by technical specifications, but at Jerez, the strain of the season's expectations seemed to finally weigh down the shoulders of the Ottoman King. It was a reminder that even the most gifted athletes are susceptible to the brutal physics of the premier class. But nothing could prepare the team for the fallout of the debrief, as the reality of P13 forced a total recalibration of Yamaha's championship ambitions. As the sun set over the Andalusian hills, the atmosphere in the Yamaha hospitality suite was one of somber reflection. A P13 finish for a rider of Toprak's caliber is more than just a bad day. It is a data point that demands a change in direction. Speculation emerged that the team would be flying in new components for the upcoming test in Mugello, specifically focusing on a redesigned ride height device that might better suit Toprak's braking geometry. The paddock whispers were no longer about when he would win, but whether the Yamaha V4 was truly ready for a title tilt in 2026. According to rumors, there was a heated confrontation, phrased safely as an intense technical exchange, between the crew chief and the engine department regarding the power delivery curves that had failed Toprak during the race. However, the rider himself remained defiant. In a brief statement to the press, he hinted that this difficult recovery would only serve to make the eventual victory sweeter. But the damage to the points standings was done. For the first time in his career, Toprak is an underdog chasing a pack that has realized he is not, in fact, a machine. As the circus moves toward Le Mans, the question remains, was Jerez a one-time anomaly, or have the rival manufacturers found the blueprint to neutralize the most exciting talent in modern racing? The Blue Revolution is at a crossroads, and the next few weeks will determine if this P13 was a minor stumble or the beginning of a very long and painful climb to the top.